Tell me about your vision.
My vision is to make people aware of the power of education, particularly when it is used with very young children to influence society. Of
Mm.
course, education is very empowering to an individual who wants to change their own lives and to work towards goals, but it is also a powerful tool in the hands of other people, particularly when it's used with children that are very young and very influential. And it's important that parents be aware of this and that they take time to make decisions that will impact their children and themselves in the future.
Tell me more about that. Um, how has that impacted your life as well? And yeah.
I was blessed in that I was able to use education to attain goals rather than perhaps being influenced by people who wanted to change me away from my parents' beliefs. My parents were both teachers. Perhaps I was blessed in that. So they were very involved in my education, very involved in my childhood, my very early childhood. I sat on my mother's knee and listened to stories. Um, and so their culture and their beliefs were passed on to me um, before I even had time to think about it. They were just ingrained in me because I always heard them. But as I got older, I began to see particularly in writing this book and doing the research around this book, I began to see how much of an influence others could be on the beliefs and values of children. The earlier you start influencing the children, the more ingrained those beliefs become. For me, it's sort of like t-ball. We might not have as many children who liked baseball if they didn't start children at a very young age playing it, understanding about practice, going and committing the time it takes to get better and better at the skills. We can use education in culture and values the same way that they use T-ball to influence youth.
Um, that is awesome. I remember from I'm born and raised in India, by the way, if you didn't know that. Like I have
Okay,
not been brought here. I moved to United States, I think when I was 18, and my
18.
family still lives in India. Most of my family, anyway. They visit when they want to, but I've created a home for myself and my family here. And growing up, um, there were so many things in our education system that helped me obviously along what I've come along and things I've learned. But there's so many other things that boxed me into a way of thinking.
Yes,
And now when I'm grown up and done my own research and realized for myself, I'm like, wow, those things don't make sense. And why are they in the textbook still? And why are the people still teaching it? And so I've gone through some of that. Clearly, I've not gone through the American education system when it comes to uh, like high school and below in early years. But so tell me more about that. Like
well, as a
what
teacher, I do remember, and it's sort of funny, but it's not funny. It's certainly indicative of the impact, not to the good, that our willingness to turn over our education, the education of our children, to others. I was a science teacher when I first started, and when the books were being adopted each year, because books were adopted for certain grades, certain things were taught third grade, fourth grade, seventh grade. I was a middle school teacher, so I was in the group who was evaluating the middle school science books. And as a science major myself, I had been in a lot of labs, I had seen a lot of things, and I had lots of activities that my children could do in the classroom. But as we began to read over the books, some of us began to notice that not all of the experiments in the books that were up for adoption worked. And so the university, we're very near a university, a major university. So one of the professors there wrote a grant that set up a summer program where we took every book that was up for adoption in our state at that time, and we performed every single activity that was provided in the book that our children might use. And while some of them didn't necessarily work quite like you expected it, or it wasn't necessarily exciting, there was one that actually exploded. And so there we are downstairs in the bottom of the chemistry building, and it exploded. And we sent word very quickly to the professor who was over that particular section. And he came running back, no, 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 y'all must have done something wrong. So he carried it back to another chemistry lab, and he redid the experiment, and it exploded again with him as well.
Mhm.
And so for us in sitting around and talking about what we had seen, we began to realize that the people who put the books together were perhaps writers. Maybe they weren't necessarily scientists. So they were putting together ideas that sounded good, and they might sound exciting enough to be sold on the market for the public schools, but they didn't have time or didn't take the time to actually do the experiments. And this was truly hazardous. And um, of course, reading again about our treatment of the indigenous people over the years, you began to see that perhaps we did some experiments there too without knowing full well what the end result might be. So for me, taking the time to study and look at, like you did, go back and say, that doesn't really make any sense, and think about it. And that takes a commitment of time on the part of parents to take care of their children.
Mm. What would you say, Gwen, is your why about your vision? Like, why do you do what you do?
I just think it's important for our children to learn to think,
Mm.
to not be, um, I guess the common term is dummied down, to not be spoon fed what other people want them to believe or want them to know, or what fits, what's easy. I want all people, all people anywhere, to be able to think their way through things that make them feel uncomfortable. Why does it make me feel uncomfortable? What can I do? What are the possible outcomes? What are the consequences of each of those outcomes? And so that thought process is very important. And if our children are not allowed to question things, they won't grow up with that thinking process. So for me, I truly believe that the future of free humanity is based in that critical thinking capacity.
So, what's the solution to this big mess?
Oh, wow. Um, that's more than a 15-minute answer for sure. But I think that small groups, individuals, must, they have to be aware, they have to take the time. Even if we start with just one school, and I think it's started already, they just need encouragement. Obviously, your parents raised a free thinker, someone who ventured out on his own, looked at things, questioned what he saw. That thinking process is very important, and we have to make sure that it's never squelched. And that's going to take a lot of people who accept and understand the consequences of not being free thinkers.
I completely agree because um, I don't like talking about negative things per se because I feel like inspiration is the way um, to see help people see the brighter side of things instead of focusing on the negative.
Yes.
Um, but in my life, I've seen so many examples where family members would suppress their own family members knowingly or unknowingly, um, and they would botch the spirit of thinking down or the spirit of that person down in a way that they would not think outside the box. They would do the norm instead of maybe what they were meant to do, maybe what they would excel at, maybe what their uh, uh, strong traits, their skills were.
Yeah.
So I think you're absolutely right that when it comes to education, what we put inside us and what we put inside our kids is very important because they are going to be shaping the future. I'm almost 30 now, and according to dad, I probably lived almost half my life. So I
Yeah.
got like maybe 30, 40, 50 years to live. And there's other generation moving up. They're learning what needs to happen in the future, and they'll be the ones deciding um, what else happens and how people are. What do we do? Do we improve people's life for the better, or do we make it worse?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so I think it's very important what we teach our kids. It's funny to me. One of the things is um, uh, a lot of times in my friends and family where kids go to high school, they spend 8 hours of their day in that high school, and they come back, and then the kids are irrational, rowdy, and they're angry, and they do stupid stuff, and the parents are like, I wonder what went wrong with my kid. I'm like, you don't have any idea. 8 hours, that kid, what he does and who he learns from. No idea. You don't know what the heck is going to happen when he comes home and he comes in a controlled environment instead of someone you have no idea who's teaching your kid and what they're teaching your kid. And not even what they're saying to your kid, like how are they acting in front of your kid, like, what's
Yes.
their body language? Like, what is your kid actually picking up? What kind of people is your kid hanging out with? Have you even checked his backpack? What he has in there? Like, you have no idea. Like, and and you want to answer the question, "What's wrong with my kid?" How about everything? And how about
Well,
nothing?
and it really starts, I think for me, that was the part of the research of the book that was so clear to me that it begins so much earlier, the influence, and it takes so much less influence. The younger the child, the less influence it takes to actually, or the less action it takes to bring about the influence that someone might be trying to do on your child. Because, yes, for those children, an 8-hour day in school, that's a portion of their life. It's not just a
Exactly.
portion of their day. And so that influence stays with them, particularly if they come home and the parents are busy. And I know that parents are busy. They have jobs, they have lives. Um, but and I like what you said as well about the positive. There's so much negativity in the world, and so it's easy to come home and collapse from a busy day or a hard day, and just simply sink into that negativity because it sort of goes along with how you already feel. It takes effort to be positive. It takes commitment to think or define something that's good that you can then share with another person, or give to another person, that is what they need then to keep on with what you're trying to get them away from, if what they are in is negative. And so that commitment of time, if the influence has been bad, your commitment and positivity about how good something can be just makes all the difference in the world for those young people.
Thank you for being here today. I'm really happy that you tuned in to Vision Pros Live. I'm looking forward to seeing your reactions as these episodes continue to move forward. This is going to get more and more fun. We'll have more engagement as well. We'll invite people to participate in the show. And thank you for giving us your time and attention. Have an excellent time building out your vision and becoming a Vision Pro yourself.